Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Chuggu Podcast. My name is Thomas Durning, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Pearse McLaughlin.
Hiya, how
Hello,
you doing?
Pearse. Not too bad. Alongside Pearse and I, making his debut on the podcast, we have Liam Docherty joining us. Hello, Liam.
All right, lads, I'm off the bench making my debut here.
Finally.
I know he finally got me.
So, on today's podcast, we will be discussing the results of this weekend's FA Cup semi-finals. Previewing this weekend's Scottish Cup semi-finals, and at the end of the podcast, Pearse will give a rundown of all the latest Asian football news. So coming up next, we'll be discussing the results of the FA Cup semi-finals. So on Saturday, the 22nd of April, Manchester City defeated Sheffield United 3-0 to send Man City to the final of this competition for the first time in 3 years. So starting off with you, Pearse, what was your reaction to the result?
What result?
The Man City Sheffield United one.
I can't remember. Man's pretty comfortable, isn't it? 3-0. You can expect the Man City to win, even though they'd probably rotated about half their team with the upcoming Champions League match coming up. But the most surprised one was Man U winning the penalties, because Man U have been kind of off the boil recently. And obviously,
We'll go into that match. But just did you see the Man City game?
no, I didn't.
Did you not see it? What about you, Liam?
Stick to the script, Pearse. I thought it was quite. I expected that, to be honest, because they swept away Burnley in the last round, and they're the team to beat in the Championship. So I always felt like that was the most likely outcome. I feel like the Sheffield United defenders never helped themselves. Obviously, they conceded 3 goals, but you look at the second and the third goal, they just kind of back off the. You're facing a team of that quality, they're going to finish the chances. So you can't really get away with it against Man City like they maybe can in the Championship. So I expected that, and 3-0 could have probably been 4, 5 or 6. So no big surprises here.
No, it was a really good result for them. And Sheffield United, I mean, they've had a bounce season. I think they're just about promoted. I think they only need one more win, and then that's them back in the Premier League. So, no, they've had Sheffield United. I mean, they've had a bounce season, and we'll be seeing them win the Premier League next season. So, obviously, with Man City now in the final, that's them still in the race, obviously for the Premier League title. They're also in the semi-finals of the Champions League. So, what do you think about the chances of winning the treble? Start with you, Pearse?
I don't think they won the treble. I think they won 2. I think they won the Premier League, and I think they won the FA Cup. I think the Champions League, they've got a mental block, but FA Cup and domestic competitions, especially like the Carabao Cup, they've won that so many times. But I think the FA Cup against Manchester United, who have been poor this season, but they're still in the top 4 race. But they're better than they were under Solskjaer and Rangnick last season. And the fact is that Manchester United have already won a trophy already, so that could be a double for them. And it is obviously a final and everything to play for at Wembley. But I do see Manchester City having far too much firepower for Man United. And I do think the Man City in the driving seat for the Premier League title, even though Arsenal kind of tailed off the last couple of weeks. Yeah, but I think the Champions League is just a step too far for them. I think they'll win a double. That's respectable.
What about yourself, Liam? Do you think they'll do it, the treble?
I think they will, and I've backed them the last season or two to get further in the Champions League. But I think this season, I know it's only one player, but Haaland's strikes me as the type of guy that can help a team win. And you look at Madrid, who've got Benzema. Obviously, I'm not comparing the strikers because he's like world class, and Haaland's kind of just at the start of his career in a sense. But I think they've got that extra guy who can actually bring the players together and put them further this time. And I think they'll take care of Man United in the cup as well. They had a purple patch maybe a month or two ago, but they've kind of dipped a wee bit. So it's a cup game, so you can never really look too much into form. But at the same time, I think City will do it in both competitions, and I think they'll win the league as well, because Arsenal have had a couple of chances, 2 or 3 chances to like extend the lead. They're good at winning games when City have won, but I feel like when they've got that extra game to go further ahead, they kind of cave a wee bit. So I think City will win the league as well.
Mm-hmm. So the other semi-final, which was played on the Sunday, the 23rd April, that was between Manchester United and Brighton. And the winners of this match were Man United, who won in penalties after both teams drew 0-0 after 120 minutes of football. So starting off with you, Pearse, what was your reaction to the result?
More surprised, to be honest, because Brighton have been just an exciting team to watch this season. Firstly, at the start of the season under Potter, and then since De Zerbi's came in, and obviously one of the standout players this season has been like players like Mitoma and Caicedo, who was linked with a move to Arsenal in January. But I think Manchester United just put in a professional performance after getting absolutely humiliated away in Europe against Sevilla, where they just kind of shut up shop and looked to take the counter. Obviously they've had injuries and that as well, suspensions and stuff like that recently. So, but I think, see on paper, you'd expect Manchester United to win, but it wasn't that. It wasn't that way during the match, and I think Manchester United will count themselves lucky. But Ten Hag's got yourself in 2 finals, so you can't exactly say he's doing a bad job.
Mm-hmm. What about yourself, Liam? What was your reaction?
I mean, I thought it was quite a good game for it being 0-0. I'm surprised there wasn't a goal in 90 minutes, to be honest. I think it was a game of 2 great keepers, because they both had good saves. I think that's Man United's problem, because De Gea had probably one of his worst performances against Sevilla, a couple of mistakes, and then he makes saves like that in the weekend's game. So when it gets to a penalty shootout, I just think it's your luck. You obviously still need to score the penalties, but I feel kind of bad for Brighton, because they look pretty good and they pushed Man United obviously all the way. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was a brilliant game, because the match report is up in the Football Chuggu website. Themselves pretty gutted, because they played really well in the match. So this means that the FA Cup final, it'll be between Man City and Man United. Quite surprising that this is the first time that both these teams will actually meet in the final of the FA Cup. So starting off with you, Pearse, who do you think will win?
I'm going to say Man City. I think there's just far too much firepower. Players like Mahrez, Foden, Grealish, Bernardo Silva's in form his life this season, and then you've got the main man Haaland up front who just scores goals for fun, and then you've got Kevin De Bruyne, just the man that just can do everything. He's just a complete midfielder. And I do think if Man United were to win the match, it'd be down to Man City mistakes and Man City not performing to their top level.
Mm-hmm. What about yourself, Liam?
yeah, I agree. I think if Man City play to their full potential, there's no team that can stop them just now. I think I was surprised this is the first time in a few years they've been to the final, but you look at the teams have played previously earlier in the competition, and Chelsea and Arsenal. I think they would have been quite happy with a couple of draws before the final. I think Spurs were the only other bigger team you would say in that in the draw in the earlier couple of rounds, but yeah, I think City will win easily if they turn up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same. I can't see past Man City, especially with, I mean, if I mean, I can't see it. I can't see Man United doing it. So I'd say Man City for that game as well.
Yeah, Haaland, that might be like what they've needed in these cup competitions, because they're good over like the course of the season, obviously, but in the cup competitions have always fell short, and I just think Haaland's going to make a big difference. He's that sort of match winner player. So
Yeah, he's a guy. He's a guy now that they can turn to get the goals and the big goals. He's a big game player, isn't he? So yeah, City have got it all at the moment.
That's what Chelsea did years ago under Drogba. Wasn't he as prolific as people thought he was, but in big games he turned up, and that's what Man City need.
That's what you need in games, isn't it? Because you could be sitting there when Man City playing that final, and if they win that, and in 2 weeks' time they could be playing a Champions League final at that time. So it's exciting times for Man City at the moment. But I think for me, they've just got to keep Haaland fit. If they keep him fit, they've got a great chance of winning every competition that they're in at the moment.
And they've always had obviously good players and match winners in a sense, but I feel like before Haaland they played more as a team in a sense. So you had to kind of rely on the full team being at it, or a few players being at it. Whereas I think if they're off it a wee bit, Haaland can still win them games through what I've seen. So I think they still need to be at their best, but even if they're not, I think they still got a good chance. So
yeah. So we will now move on to the Newcastle versus Tottenham game. And on Sunday, the 23rd of April, Newcastle defeated Tottenham. Was the fact that in the first 20 minutes of the match, Newcastle were already 5-0 up. So obviously, the game was already done by then. And then after the game, the result of it was the fact that Tottenham announced that interim manager Christian Stellini was sacked, with Ryan Mason taking over. So starting off with you, Pearse, what was your reaction when you read that result?
Mind blown, honestly. But not really surprised the way Tottenham capitulated, because this season it's been dire, to be honest. Eric Dyer. No, 20 minutes to be 5-0 down. Unbelievable, but it's not acceptable, to be honest, for a team of Tottenham size when you've got two world-class players in Harry Kane and Heung-min Son. They must be thinking, what's the point of playing for this team? Because the fact is, the players behind them are bang average, because you're saying it was 5-0 in 20 minutes. At half-time, it could have been 10-0, honestly. Newcastle were at it for the get-go, and Hugo Lloris, he is not a captain. He looked perfectly fine in the first half, and somehow he has a hip injury at half-time. And some of the goals that he let in, I have to question the goalkeeper as well. And in terms of Stellini staying on as the interim, that's Daniel Levy basically just giving up the season, because they were in a top four race. Now they're well and truly out of it, because the fact that they've kept the man that was Conte's number 2, and then they're going to Newcastle, and you're changing for 3 at the back because your defence isn't good enough, and then you go with a 4 at the back. It just baffles me, the decisions they make. The only positive is Harry Kane got another goal, but that's the only positive you can even spin on Tottenham. And the fact is that Newcastle just took their foot off the gas in the second half.
What about you, Liam? What's your reaction to that?
Just the same. I'm not surprised at all with the result, but I was just shocked at how quickly Tottenham folded. But then at the same time, I wasn't really shocked as well, because just so bad right now. And you can look at it and say, the interim manager was sacked, which is the first time I've ever seen that happen. I don't really remember that happening before, but at half time they obviously regrouped, and I know Newcastle probably took their foot off the gas. The game was won inside 20 minutes, but they finished the second half 1 each, which still probably isn't good enough for Tottenham. But it just shows you that if you do the basics right, you probably can get a result of some sort. So I just think everybody's quite trigger happy just now at sacking managers and interim coaches. It's just getting a bit of a shambles, to be honest.
I watched a bit of the game. I did watch the first half, and I think every time I looked up, there was a goal. Newcastle were scoring a goal. To be 5-0 down in the first 21 minutes of the game, that's just shocking. It's just, that's such a big game. That was such a big game as well, because obviously Tottenham and Newcastle are fighting to get into the top 4, and we're obviously talking more about Tottenham here, but I mean, for Newcastle, what when and I think if you were sitting here 3 years ago talking about Newcastle being the Champions League, you would never have said that. So I mean, the progression they've made over the last ever since they've been taken over, I mean, it's been amazing. But I just want to go back to Tottenham. So starting off with you, Pearse, what do you think? What do you think's gone wrong? What do you think's the main reason at Tottenham for it to kind of go all wrong this season? Like, what's the big problem?
Daniel Levy, lack of investment. And the fact is, did he really want Conte? Because like some of the managers have been like since Pochettino, he was like the one man that got into a Champions League final. They had this squad they could have built on it, and then they didn't, and then they sacked them, and then they bring Nuno on, didn't work. Brought in Mourinho, had some success at the beginning, didn't work, and they bring Conte, who's the same kind of pragmatic style. It worked in the beginning, but then this season it just hasn't worked at all. And then obviously the fallout for him getting sacked with his comments and stuff like that, and then Stellini. So Levy needs to sort out what type of manager he wants and what type of style he wants to go for. And the fact is that squad, like any football fan can look at that Tottenham squad and look at that defence and say that is not Premier League standard. And if you want to build on a successful club that wants to challenge for trophies, challenge for top four, challenge for titles, which Tottenham were doing under a period under Pochettino, but some of that squad is still there. Like you need to improve. You need to keep reinvesting. Like you can't just pin your hopes on Harry Kane and Son and Kulusevski to do some magic. You know what I mean? So for me, it's just a lack of investment, and for me, it all starts with recruitment, and they need to just wrap the whole team up. And you look at the teams around them; they're all improving. Look at Arsenal; they've signed Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus from Man City, proven winners under Manchester City, and then Chelsea went out and spent about probably 800 million. So, and clubs are all spending out and about them, and you look at the way teams like Newcastle are improving. No, it's not just about spending money, but it's spending money rightly on the right type of players to fit your system. And look at Brighton as well. Like they've spent pennies, but they're doing it in the right way, and they're exciting to watch. And Tottenham just looks after the football at the moment. That's the only way I could see them going down further. And the fact is, I do see Kane and Son wanting to just jump ship in the summer.
What about yourself, Liam? What do you think's the main problem at Tottenham?
I kind of just echo everything Pearse has said, and I like the Newcastle example because they're third in the league and they're doing really well, and a lot of people probably point to the money that they've now got, but I don't think, I mean, I need to look at the figures obviously, but I don't get the sense that they went out and spent hundreds and brought in hundreds of superstars. Like, he's still a good manager and he's got them playing well with, 3 or 4 players that he's brought in or whatever, but I think it goes back to the hierarchies where, like I say, everybody's just so trigger happy to get rid of a manager as soon as it goes bad, because you look at when they had Pochettino for, was it 4 or 5 years or something, and they always finished third, second, third, or the top 4 of that. So maybe there wasn't an excuse to sack him, but I feel like when they sacked Nuno, it was only 4 months into the job, and he'd won Manager of the Month in his first month, or his first few months. I don't exactly remember what month it was, but the one Manager of the Month, he was picking up results, and then as soon as they started getting a few bad results, they sacked him. Conte was 4th in the league when he gets sacked, and you're thinking, like, obviously it's not going great, the form's not good, but they're sitting 4th in the league. Like, it's not like they're sitting in relegation, so I think they just need to persevere and hope it gets better instead of just sacking somebody as soon as things don't go right.
So we will now move on to previewing this weekend's Scottish Cup semi-finals. So on Sunday, the 29th of April, Falkirk will play Inverness Cally Thistle. And on Sunday, 30th of April, Celtic will play Rangers. So we'll start talking. We'll start by talking about the Falkirk versus Inverness Cali Thistle match. So starting off with you, Pearse, what do you think about it, and who do you think will win?
I'm going to go with Inverness Cali Thistle. I do think I was quite impressed with the performance they showed against Kilmarnock in the earlier rounds, by beating a Premier League opposition. And the fact is they have got a few injuries in that back in the side, so they're so full strength, and they've been performing well in the Championship when I've tuned in to watch them. And in terms of Falkirk, we both seen them last season. They weren't great, but now they've actually got the right manager in, and they're actually doing really well. So for me, it's tough to call. I think it could go either way, but if I had to put a name in the hat, I'd probably edge towards Cali Thistle.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Liam? What's your thoughts about the match, and who you think will win?
I think it'll be a good match. It's quite good to see two lower league teams in the semi-final at Hampden. I don't really remember the last time that happened either, to be honest. But I know that's good for the game, and I think I would edge towards Cali Thistle as well. They're obviously a league above Falkirk. Falkirk, I think they've got 2 wins in the last 8, and Cali Thistle have got 6 in the last 8 or something. But again, form kind of goes out the window in cup games, but it is just a 50-50. So if you had to choose, you would go for Cali Thistle based on the form, even though, as I say, form isn't the be all and end all. But Falkirk losing the league to Dunfermline as well, I expected a wee bit more for them in the last few games, but again, their form's not been great. So I would edge towards Cali Thistle.
Mm-hmm. No, I echo what you say as well about the fact there's 2 lower league teams in it in the semi final, and one of them get to go to the final. That's really good to see. So we'll now discuss the other semi final, which is between Celtic and Rangers. So again, and who do you think will win?
Me?
Yeah, start with you. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, mate. It's just cut off a bit there. Again, it's gonna be a tough one to call. Depends on like injuries and stuff like that as well, because like both sides unexpectedly dropped points at the weekend in the domestic league, where Rangers surprisingly fallen to defeat to Aberdeen 2-0, and then Celtic drawn at home to Motherwell. But both sides didn't look at their free flowing best, and the middle of the part is also always a key battle. We say this before every match, but it is. It's like it just sets the tempo of the game. Like the last game, like it was quite scrappy. There was so many errors from Celtic in their home game, and obviously the last cup final was decided by one man, and it was Kyogo. Might be it was the same at Parkhead as well, but it could be the same again. But with it being Hampden and obviously Rangers, probably or you'd probably say slight favourites because they're the holders. But I would say the key battles is the midfield, and if someone like Rio Hatate is fit, or the Celtic risk playing an Aaron Moy that's not fully fit again, or do you play the inform Matt O'Reilly, or do you chuck a water in to start? And obviously Celtic have got injuries in the wings as well in terms of like, I don't know if Jota's fully fit, or is it would you play Sead Haksabanovic and Maeda? And in terms of Rangers, do you chuck Morelos up front even though he looks well off the pace, or do you throw Cholak in, or players like Tillman who hasn't really impacted this sort of fixture yet? Raskin's looked alright. Cantwell's looked okay the last time he played as well. So, and obviously James Tavernier is usually Rangers' talisman in these fixtures. So, and it's key to see as well if Connor Goldson's is fit for Rangers as well, because without him at the back, they look absolutely hopeless. I've had to tip it, I'd probably say I was going to say a high scoring game. I'm going to say 3-2 Celtic.
Mm-hmm. What about yourself, Liam?
Again, I just think that the cup games are really hard to call because form goes out the window and a lot of them. But you're obviously asking for a prediction. You need to base it on something, and I think Celtic unbeaten against Rangers this season. So you're obviously going to sway towards Celtic. You know, they've got the better of them in the last few games. And I think for me, the difference between the two teams is Celtic have a style. And every time you see them, they play that style. So at the weekend, when they drop points, they weren't at their best, but they still had that style. And you know what team's going to turn up. Whereas Rangers, they can turn up or they can't turn up. So I think that's the difference. So even if Celtic aren't at their best, you still expect that attacking football, and you expect them to get chances. But at the weekend, you've seen that one or two teams can turn up for Rangers, and I think that comes down to the sort of style aspect of how they play, and it's maybe not there yet because he's not got his own players or whatever. But
So for the final part of the show, Pearse will now give his Asian football roundup.
Yeah, so on Saturday, before Guangzhou kicked off on the Sunday, I was put a wee article up on the website, but I met a few of the Korean football players for the Guangzhou team, and they were doing like a meet and greet, and they done it also on the Sunday as well. And it was just nice to see, just to interact with some of the players, get photos, and see the kids and that with the mascots, and get some goodie bags and some activities and stuff like that. And also, when I met one of the players, got a photo with him, and then posted it later on my social media, and they responded saying, "Nice to meet you," which I thought was a nice wee touch. But in terms of the results, so on the Japanese J League 1, kicked off this weekend, it was on Saturday, Sanfrecce Hiroshima 1, FC Tokyo 2, Vissel Kobe losing 3-2 to Angelo team Yokohama Marinos 3-2. And on the Sunday, the full card that basically finished the weekend, and it's Albert's Nagata 0, Kashi Antlers 2, Senros Osaka 1, Kashiori 0, Aikido Consadole Sapporo 2, Avispa Fukuoka 2, Kyoto Sanga 2, Sagan Tosa 3, Nagoya Grampus 2, Shonan Bellmare 2, Gambo Osaka 1, Yokohama FC, Kawasaki Frontale 1, and Uberei Diamonds 1. So that leaves the J League looking like Vissel Kobe still top with 19 points for 9 games, and Nagoya Grampus just in behind them on 18, and Yokohama Marinos climbing up to 3rd position with their win over Vissel Kobe and put themselves right in the title race with 17 points. Joined there with Uberei Diamonds and Sanfrecce Hiroshima. And at the bottom of the table, Yokohama FC still remain winless after 9 matches, only on 3 points. In terms of the Korean League, so that kicked off on Saturday with FC Seoul winning 3-1 against Suwon Blue Wings. Daegu FC winning 1-0 against Daegu Citizen. Ulsan Hyundai drawing 2 each with Pohang Steelers. Incheon United drawing 2-2 with Suwon FC. And on the Sunday, we had Gwangju FC drawing 0-0 with Gangwon FC, and Jeju United losing 2-0 to Jeonbuk Hyundai FC. And that's all your latest Asian football news.
Thank you, Pearse. And thanks, Liam, for coming on. It's good to have you.
no worries, it's good to jump on finally. But can I just ask what was in the goodie bag, Pearse?
Yeah, the goodie bags were just like posters, and you get the players to sign it, and the wee stickers of the club crest, like the wee tattoos, and then you'd like footballs and that as well. You had to kick it into goal, and then it was like wee mini-sized footballs, and then you gave it to the players, and the players signed them as well. So nice wee touch, and the fact is they were doing it just to improve the gates, because the gates aren't massive in Korea, so it's not like Scotland or the UK, like where it's like pure sellout crowds. It's more like geared towards like families and just enjoying the time they're eating food and just socialising. So it's just try to get more people through the gates, and it isn't really that expensive. Maybe £15, £20 a ticket for the Korean First Division, so it's actually not too bad.
Yep, that sounds really good. So thank you everyone for listening to this episode of the Football Chuggu Podcast. This podcast will be available to listen to on the Football Chuggu YouTube channel and also on the Football Chuggu website. Thanks for listening, and see you soon.
Bye-bye.